May I please have everyone's attention? Before the meeting begins, we ask that everyone at this time please silence your cell phones. The Fort Bend ISD Board of Trustees meeting is an open meeting for the public to observe the board conducting district business. Therefore, patrons may only address the board during the designated audience items section on the agenda. If you have printed materials you want to give to the board members, you must provide them to Board Secretary Gary Rozier or myself. We will provide them to the board. We also ask that members of the audience be respectful of others and remain quiet during the meeting so that everyone is able to hear the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The time is 6:01 p.m. and this meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum and the meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. First up is our Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing after the pledges for a silent invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Please remain standing for the silent invocation. You may be seated. First are our recognitions, Dr. Dupree.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the board will join me in front of the dais, we have several exciting student and staff recognitions this evening.
President Burdine, Dr. J. Dupree, members of the board, we have some outstanding students we're going to recognize this evening, and we're going to start out with a couple of recent graduates. From the 2019 graduating class, we have Miss Alexis Villarreal and we have Abigail Tassan. If they could please come forward, I would like to share with you that these two graduates are going to be participating in the first cohort of the Texas A&M Aggie Achieve program this fall. Aggie Achieve stands for Academic Courses in Higher Inclusive Education and Vocational Experiences. This is a 4-year inclusive higher education program for young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We're very proud of these young ladies. Here today from Texas A&M University are Dr. Olivia Robinson, Program Director. If you could please come forward, we're going to get a group picture. Also, Dr. Carly Gilson, Assistant Professor of Special Education, and Jody Ford, Senior Director of Development for the Texas A&M Foundation for the College of Education and Human Development. We're going to look at Miss Tanya right here for a picture. Congratulations to these outstanding young ladies. Next, I'd like to introduce Marshall High School boys track team. They earned its 4th state title in 5 years at the 2019 5A UA State Track and Field Championship. I'd like to share that the relay team set a new record, a 5A record of 1 minute and 23 seconds. So we are so proud of these young men. We've got some representatives here from that team. Can I please have Bryson Stubblefield, who placed 3rd in the 100, to come forward? Mr. Jaquise White. Mr. Garrett Wilkins. Mr. Devon Beckles. And supporting these outstanding young men are coaches Lloyd Banks and Rodney Alex. Congratulations to the Buffs. We're going to get a group picture.
Everyone look this way. Okay, and one more. Great.
All right, congratulations, Marshall. Good job. Also joining us this evening is the Marshall High School girls track team, who earned second place overall in the 2019 5A UIL State Track and Field Championship. The relay team won first place in the 4x400 and second place in the 4x200. Representing the girls track team, we have Denisha Johnson. Would you please come forward? And we have Miss Alexandria Ruth. Our athletes are supported by their coaches, Benita Smith, Skylar Tennessee, and Tracy Wilson. Please join us for a group photo.
Okay, let's gather for a photo.
It's a good problem to have.
Oh, thank you, guys. All right, everyone looking at me. And one more.
All right, congratulations. Next, I'd like to introduce our Ridge Point High School baseball team for competing in the Texas State 5A championship game. They finished the season with a 33-5-1 record as the Texas State 6A division runner-up. Let's give them a round of applause. From our boys baseball team at Ridge Point, can I please have Mr. Dylan Pollock come forward? Gabe Coliani, who was also selected for the state all-tournament team. Reed Guerrera. Carter Guerrera. Austin Bradbury, and he was also selected for the state all-tournament team. Jack Baker, also a member of the state all-tournament team. Justin Vahasing. Mr. Mitch Cashin. Mr. Will Gijosa. Jacob Garcia. Ryan Schlotzhauer. Mr. Travis Irvin. Dylan Bobo, sorry, Dallin. And then Alex Ward. Very good. And our coach, Mr. Clinton Welch, if you could please join us, Coach. Dylan should be in the front now.
Yes. Yes, he should. Yeah, come on, guys. Lottery arrangement.
All right, we're almost there, guys, right here.
You can't see Allison. Yes,
There you
yes.
go.
Perfect. Dave. Okay. All right, guys. Oh, I got you. One more. Perfect.
Congratulations, Rich Point. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, moving on, we've got an outstanding, well, we actually have the Region 4 Assistant Principal of the Year in the house. We'd like to introduce Dr. Danielle Jackson, Assistant Principal at Rich Point High School. Congratulations to Dr. Jackson.
On three, 1, 2, and 3. One more. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Lastly, for recognition, I'd like to introduce some special guests with us this evening from Synergistic. And remember, if we're remembering, in November of 2017, the board approved the agreement with Synergistic Energy. The program was designed to provide innovative and robust energy strategies to support the implementation of the adopted long-range district energy plan. Since then, Fort Bend ISD has saved over 12% of its energy costs. We're proud to report. And so here today from Synergistic, we have Daniela Sudeth and Alfred Ray. If you could please join us. And we'd like to also invite Mr. Sean Monroe. And then representing Fort Bend ISD, I would like to have Adrian Carter, Oscar Bettis, Damian Viltz, and David Bass to come forward. They've got a check presentation and a plaque they'd like to present us with.
It's good to be back in Fort Bend. Thank you. My name is Alfred Ray. I'm here substituting for my good friend Gary Clark, representing the company Synergistic. And I know we want to make this as quick as possible, but I want to say you are here to be honored for achieving a great milestone the Fort Bend ISD has achieved in energy conservation and environmental excellence. Thanks to the combined efforts of the staff here at the district, all over the district, led by the operations team, you have reached the sustainability milestone by reducing the district's overall environmental footprint, the equivalent of 59 million miles of cars not driven, 403,000 new tree seedlings planted, 4,100 metric tons per year in every household of carbon dioxide that has been reduced. And the big piece is through June of 2019, you've saved $2.4 million added to your budget. And my team wanted to remind me that was just through June of 2019. They've gotten to about $3.2 million over the time since then. So it's a remarkable achievement which we could not do without the great partnership between the district and Synergistic, led by the operations team who's done a great job. So I'm here to present to the Superintendent Board of Trustees this check for $2.4 million, along with the plaque award for energy stewardship to the Fort.
If I could get all of you in, and we can take a. Okay, this is perfect. On three. 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you, Synergistic. That concludes recognition.
Thank you.
For those of you who would like to leave, this is a good time to do so. All right, Dr. Dupree. Actually, we'll wait just a second here. All right, next up are our audience items. First is going to be Swatara Collins. Mrs. Collins, are you here? Mrs. Collins, please step up to the microphone and make sure it's on. You'll have 3 minutes, and Mr. Rosenthal here will give you a 30-second warning, or 30 seconds warning when we get to 2.5 minutes. So thank you.
Start now.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I want to start by saying that it is very exhausting coming here and having to do this, especially with all the credentials in the room and on the board. I feel like I shouldn't have to come here and preach to everyone about what's right and what's wrong and what's respectful and what's disrespectful and what's decent in order and what's not, but I have to, so here goes. I don't know how we can formulate an agenda of any kind right now without having the Sugarland 95 on the agenda. When the situation is in limbo and you're still scrambling to build a technical center on sacred ground, yet it's not on the agenda and it hasn't been for months. I don't understand how that agenda can be done. And to audience members, you might hear some things that you may not have been aware of. And if you don't know who the Sugarland 95 are, they're the 95 remains of African ancestors who were found at the site where the James Reese Technical Center has been force built and thrown up onto sacred ground where they found the remains of my communal ancestors. I am a communal descendant of those men who were victim of the prison industrial complex. So if you weren't aware of that, that's what's happening right now. I don't even know for sure that those remains are still on that site. Who knows? Because there has been no transparency. I am continuing to speak for those men who are unable to speak for themselves, and boys as young as the age 14. Why go through the trouble of compiling a task force and then advisory committee only to waste people's times? The public may not be aware, but there was never any intention to honor the decisions made by the task force and committees and all these meetings that were put together by the board, by Sugarland, or whatever you want to call it. All the pomp and circumstance was all a farce, or whatever they needed to do to honor the court, and whatever they had to honor through the court and have going on is just what they needed. It was just all optics, okay? The professionals that were on the committee, those people that did research, spent time and resources to come up with the best decisions or decisions to be made as far as how to handle the situation, has not been
30
honored.
seconds.
There has been no transparency at this point. Where are the remains? What's the plan? We don't know. There's plenty of land in Sugarland that could be used to build a school, but it was never considered to actually not have the school there. The security guards on site don't know about the Sugarland 95. They don't know where the remains are. So if they were damaged or moved in some way, the security guard that you all have hired for the site would not know that those remains were moved, or what they look like, or where
Time's
they
up.
are, or what it's about.
Thank you, Mrs. Collins.
Stop lying.
Appreciate you being here this evening. Next, Terry Kolodzi. Do we have Terry Kolodzi? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Now we will be moving on to our first informational audit item, which is the internal audit of Student Transportation Department. Mr. Rice? Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. You want me to proceed with the audit? We have with us tonight Mr. Greg Gibson, who is going to be presenting on the transportation audit. Mr. Gibson, are you prepared to present that?
Mr. Rice, just 1 second. Sir, we appreciate you being here this evening, and we'd love to talk to you after we get finished with this, before we go into closed session. But if we do not have your request in by, what is our time that we need to? 5:30, then we're going to have to talk to you after we get finished here. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Rice. Sorry about that.
Mr. Gibson and the firm of Gibson Consulting has completed an internal audit on the Transportation Department. They have presented that audit to the audit committee, which has accepted it. And now Mr. Gibson is here to present the audit to the full board and anyone who wants to listen. Mr. Gibson?
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Members of the board, Dr. Dupree, it's my privilege to be here tonight as part of the board's internal audit program for continuous improvement to present the transportation audit that Mr. Rice just described. I have a short presentation I'm going to go through, and I think we'll just jump right in. I wanted to acknowledge the members of our audit team. I served as a quality assurance role. I'm the partner or the director responsible for the entire audit program, and also responsible for quality assurance on this particular audit. Cheyenne Rolfe served as the project director and project manager. Ken Ingram was our senior auditor. And then we had two transportation experts from the Transportation Institute of Texas, Linda Charrington and Michael Walk. I also wanted to thank Mr. Oscar Perez and all the names listed in Appendix A who were vital to the conduct and success of this audit. The scope of this study, you'll see that there's separate chapters for each of these areas: management and organization, transportation operations, fleet management, and training and safety. This study also addresses a number of questions, and those questions are listed on pages 3 and 4. They all have to do with one of 4 areas primarily: efficiency, effectiveness, compliance, and internal controls. And so this audit addressed these 4 areas against those 4 major criteria. Transportation, as you know, is a very big operation in Fort Bend ISD. We transport, and getting ready to transport here in a couple days, 30,000 students per day, representing approximately 40% of our student population, through 360 daily routes, 5.4 million miles a year, a $25 million operating budget with 615 positions. We have 500 buses in our fleet, and that's not including the 69 that we have through Gold Star that is contracted out. We operate this fleet through 2 terminals, Hodges Bend and Lake Olympia Terminal. There's a couple of charts I wanted to just show you that are kind of general efficiency. The Chapter 2 has a complete profile and a lot of information about Fort Bend ISD's program in terms of trend, comparison to peer districts. This was one of the charts in that chapter that shows regular transportation costs per mile. And this is an efficiency measure that basically shows how efficient, from a cost efficiency standpoint, your bus service is. The red line represents the peer average. We are just below the peer average. You can see that Katy ISD is significantly above and affects the peer average. But we are pretty much in line with the other peers, with the exception of Louisville, who has a low cost per mile. This shows regular transportation costs per rider, not per student enrollment, but actual riders that ride the bus. And so this is more of a service efficiency, and there are a couple of factors when you look at the data in Chapter 2 that kind of mirror this. One is linear density, or the service intensity. The more intensive the service is, in terms of the relationship between the number of students we transport and the number of miles that we transport them, we are second highest among the peer districts in regular transportation cost per rider, and one of the factors is service intensity. One of the other factors is the number of riders per bus. If you see that there's a chart in Chapter 2 that basically looks like the inverse of this, where Katy has the fewest riders per bus, we're second to lowest, and Cypress Fairbanks has the highest riders per bus. So all these factors, and there's other factors and variables that contribute to this, but we are second highest in terms of service efficiency. There were several commendations noted in the audit report. The principals, we conducted focus groups of principals, and they were by and large very positive on your transportation department in terms of the level of professionalism of both the supervisors and the drivers, and particularly because of the bus driver shortage that the district, like many districts, face. This is a particularly noteworthy commendation that your transportation department is able to still provide the level of service to the customers that they do, and the principals wanted to acknowledge that. The district has also been assertive in obtaining grants to support the expansion, really the creation of its compressed natural gas fleet. 2 years ago, this fleet was started out of an initiative from 2014, and the grants, there were 2 types of grants. One basically covered the cost of the buses, and another helped cover the cost of the mobile fueling facility. So this has been a key factor in getting this program off the ground. The district is also implementing a universal student ID card system. This was not necessarily a transportation initiative, but this program has obvious transportation benefits, and so we wanted to acknowledge that initiative as well. The major audit findings really kind of brought up these four major themes. And the first one that I just mentioned was the driver shortage. And the driver shortage shows its face in several statistics: vacancy rates, absentee rates, and other measures. This is a common problem. Believe it or not, there's actually school systems that have a worse problem than you do, but it doesn't make it any better for you. There's information, quite a bit of information in the report, starting on page 52, that kind of goes through some of the data of what this issue looks like. And then we made a recommendation, that's recommendation 11 on page 57, that really provides a couple of suggestions on things you can do to help mitigate the driver shortage. One is to centralize the recruiting function. Right now we kind of have a dual recruiting function, one at each terminal, and we're not getting the efficiencies that you might get if you consolidated that recruiting effort. Another is to actually use data from your recruiting efforts so that you can isolate which recruiting efforts are working better than others, and so you can isolate your efforts on those. And then there's other financial matters. In addition to pay, the district did a market study of pay several years ago, but in addition to pay, we're looking or asking the district to consider things like incentives or perhaps annualized pay, things that at least could be discussed as a way to reduce or increase driver retention. The second is data integrity. There's a couple of recommendations in our report that have to do with data integrity. One has to do with the reporting to the Texas Education Agency. We found that there were inconsistencies between that reporting and what was actually reported in the records. There actually are some intentional differences between what's reported to TEA and what we have. The TEA defines different costs to be included, but there's no reconciliation of those costs, and so there are unexplained variances between the internal reporting and the state reporting. Likewise, there was some data in accident reporting where the variations in accident reporting were so significant that they didn't look like they were possible. And so we just think that someone needs to be looking at these, and there ought to be a process that is performed to reconcile this information, to review it for reasonableness, to make sure that our data has integrity. The third major element or finding is performance measurement and accountability. Again, there were two recommendations related to this. One was to the department itself, and the department actually started developing performance measures at the beginning of this last school year, if not sooner. Most of those measures were very granular. They were at a very, very detailed level at the driver level. And we're looking more for departmental measures that show overall department efficiency. And if you look in Chapter 2, you'll see what we have in mind. And we've actually listed those under the recommendation of the types of key performance indicators you ought to be tracking at the department level. We also make a recommendation for looking at performance on your contracts. You have two contracts, one for your contracted bus service and one for your McKinney-Vento bus service. And you can actually look at performance measures related to how those contractors are performing as well. The last major theme or finding in this audit had to do with long-term planning. Recommendations 16 and 19 relate to planning, long-term planning related to your CNG fleet, your compressed natural gas fleet, which is already in the works, and also to look at how you purchase buses long-term. We tend to buy buses in bunches. Sometimes that's when the money is available. That can cause problems down the road when a big, large volume of buses hits the same number of years where they need a lot of maintenance. And then that's going to have a bigger impact on your operating costs that particular year. So I know it's difficult, but to the extent you can plan out and level out your bus purchases, it makes your operational cost more stable. There are 23 total recommendations. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to pick a couple more. Page 5 in the report presents a table of all of these along with their priority. The priorities are high, medium, and low based on our assessment of that. And then you'll also notice in the report, right after each recommendation is the district's response, the administration's response to the recommendation. And it will say they agree or disagree or partially agree, and then provide an explanation, and that's in the report. I believe all of the recommendations in this audit report were agreed to by management. I'm going to skip on to the next page. Actually, I'll come back and talk about reorganize the responsibilities for special transportation. Right now, we have special needs supervisors. There's 2 of them, and one at each site, and they're responsible for a lot of people, 80 positions each, and then they're also responsible for routing and routing adjustments, and they need help. That's just a large span of control for that position, and so we're recommending that some of the training things that they do may be moved over to the training group, and that a routing specialist be added to kind of take the routing burden off that so they can focus more on the supervision. The recommendation 5 I discussed. One of the ways you can, one of the measures should be the customer feedback. While we received customer feedback from your principals, an annual survey of your principals, more than just a single question about bus service, but really digging into the different variables or attributes of bus service, and conducting those surveys and actually incorporating those results into your key performance indicators. Pursue opportunities, number 10, through developers and local county agencies to create additional pedestrian infrastructure. We have more what's called hazardous routes ridership than the state's willing to pay for. Most districts do. It's not uncommon. But to the extent that we can help mitigate that by working with our local communities to help make it possible for more kids to walk to school safely, that would certainly help our transportation function, because the state only reimburses within a certain distance or outside a certain distance of the school. I'm going to skip over to you can see there's several recommendations about controls, fuel usage, monitoring that. The number 19 was the adopt a policy for the annual bus purchases and develop a 10-year plan. The recommendation 20 is the accident analysis and reporting procedures that related to the data integrity. And then several other organizational things relating to the training group, and then centrally tracking training history and requirements for each employee. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions about any of the recommendations in the report. I'll do my best to answer them. I may have to defer some to my team, but I'm willing to entertain questions at this time.
Mr. Rosenthal, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gibson. You, in the report, it talked about you also had some, in addition to asking principals, you had some focus groups. Now, was that just with principals, or was that with parents or whatnot? That's kind of what I thought it was when I first read it. And I just wanted to see what feedback you got from that, if it was other than just asking that one question about, amongst the principals.
We conducted 38 individual and group interviews with department administrators, staff, and focus group sessions with customers. So I don't think we only had a focus group, which is a group interview basically, but a focus group with principals. Then I think we had group interviews with groups of staff, like drivers.
Okay, so it wasn't like parents or
No.
Okay, end users basically. Okay, all right. And then thank you for bringing up the issue with the data, because I found that a little little troubling, especially the accident reporting stuff. I mean, that you'd think that would be fairly straightforward. So that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Mr. Rice? Go ahead, Mrs. James.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. Thank you, Mr. Gibson, for being here tonight, and thank you for presenting this report. It's quite lengthy 23 recommendations, so I know that represents a lot of work, both by your team and by the operations department, so thanks for bringing that all to us. So I had the same comment or question that Mr. Rosenthal did, and maybe this fits into the action on finding 6, which is about doing some surveys and getting some customer feedback, because my initial thought was our customers are really our students and our parents, so maybe getting some feedback along those lines would be useful, so we can see both sides of the equation, if you will. So thank you, Mr. Rosenthal, for bringing that up. And then I guess my other question for you, and I don't know if you would know this, but maybe we can find out at some point. One of my roles is being chair of the policy committee, and I know at the beginning of the report it listed a lot of policies that were considered in the audit, but I didn't see any feedback or if there was any gaps in policy that were uncovered or things like that. So do you know if that was looked at or if that was addressed at all?
It was. When we don't find any compliance violations, then we're usually silent about that. We should have stated that there were no compliance violations noted during the audit.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for following up on that. So, okay, thank you. I think that's good for now.
Thank you. Mr. Rice?
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. I just wanted to make a few comments, and Mr. Gibson, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. For those in the audience, I always never miss an opportunity to remind everyone that in 2005, the Texas legislature conferred upon every school district in the state, the Board of Trustees, the responsibility for conducting internal audits. And so for the past 6 years, we have been doing that here in Fort Bend ISD. And once an audit is completed and the administration has had a chance to review and respond, it's presented to the audit committee. And if the audit committee accepts the audit, which we have, we then invite Mr. Gibson or one of his associates to come and make a presentation here at our public meeting. And that audit will now be available for public review and public comment. We bear our souls on this, and the whole idea about it is to improve operations and efficiency. And I know, Mrs. James, you had a number of questions, and Mr. Gibson will respond to your questions. And once that is done, we just don't drop it. We come back 9 months from now and we'll check in to see how the district is doing at implementing the recommendations that have been proposed. I think it's a pretty efficient way to conduct business, and Dr. Dupree and his staff have been very transparent. We always have areas where we can make improvements, and we always have areas where we're doing quite well. Transporting 300,000 students to school every day is pretty impressive. 5.24 million miles a year, that's pretty impressive. And getting everyone home safe and sound, that's pretty impressive. But I want everybody to know that it's my belief that Fort Bend ISD has a very robust internal audit process, which probably will far surpass whatever the state can come up with related to an efficiency audit as required by House Bill 3. And so I want everyone to know we're running a pretty tight ship here. Number two, I want to thank Mr. Rosenthal for being the one to push to have the CNG buses in the first place. Those buses are designed, it's a very clean fuel, and there's always a risk that when we get these buses, things may not go exactly correctly, and there are changes that we have to make in terms of the procedures in the mechanic shop. And Dr. Dupree and the administration were willing to accept those challenges, and now that program is going very well, and we're helping to reduce the amount of contaminants in the air that we all breathe. So I I'm pretty proud of that, and for you for pushing that, Mr. Rosenthal. And lastly, I want to say, piggybacking on one of the presentations that was made here earlier, when we had saved $2.4 million in electrical costs, that is significant. At $57,000 a year, that's 42 teachers that we can afford to hire. And the state and the federal government cannot tell us how to spend that money. So that's another example that Fort Bend ISD is running a tight ship. We're not just resting on our laurels, and I want everybody to know that. And I'm going to keep harping on that until you get tired of hearing it. But at any rate, if there are no other questions, I simply want to say thank you, Mr. Gibson.
Mr. Rice, I'm so sorry. Mr. Rosenthal had one more question.
Okay. All right.
So I did have one other question. So did you have any discussions with transportation staff or management or you know, other district operation people about creating new operational efficiencies by adding another location, bus hub or whatever, in addition to Lake Olympia and Hodges Bend?
We do discuss facilities. We do not make a specific recommendation on whether or not you need another facility. Part of that will depend on what you plan to do with your CNG fleet and if you expect to expand that. We do mention that if you're going to expand that fleet, you're going to need a permanent fueling facility that could influence other facility demands. So that's the long-term planning that we need includes that type of long-term planning, but we did not do a feasibility study to determine how much space you needed and what it needed to look like and where it needed to be located. But that certainly is something that will need to be looked at as you continue to grow.
Because I know there has been some informal discussion about, you know, at least with that idea of maybe somewhere in the Sienna area at some point, to kind of create some efficiency. So I didn't know if you guys got into that or not. So, thank you.
Mr. Rice, if I may, I wanted to thank you, Mr. Gibson. I appreciate all your hard work. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Transportation Department. This is a huge department in our organization. It always amazes me on how well that we're able to do. It just seems like there's millions of endless opportunities for things not to go well, not to knock on wood here as we get school ramped up in the next few days. But really proud of the Transportation Department. Thank you for all your hard work. And Mr. Rice, you good? All right. Thank you, Mr. Gibson.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. Next, our back-to-school highlights, Dr. Dupree.
Yes, sir. We're about to begin the 60th anniversary year of Fort Bend ISD when school starts in 2 days. And it's not often we have the opportunity just before starting school to have a board meeting. So, I mean, literally, this is a 5 to 8 minute report. But there's several key things that are rolling out this year that were included in the 18 bond or that the board has recently taken action on. So we thought it would be good just to give a few highlights of some of these items. And we gave the board just a handout that you can see. But I'm going to turn it over to Chief Ryder to kind of start off. He's going to hit a few of the security items, and then we'll move through a few other key areas very quickly.
Good evening, President Burdine and board, and Dr. Dupree. I love going first. That's awesome. So we are celebrating tonight. These are exciting times, and just want to highlight 3 of our major safety initiatives that we've been working on recently. First of all, the RhinoWare door locks. These are floor-mounted door locks, as you know, and this is a safety advisory committee recommendation. We came to the board approved those. Went to the bond and the voters approved those, and so we have ordered almost 7,400 of these door locks, and almost every single one of them have been installed already on the classrooms for the start of school. So we're excited about that. We even created a short video to assist the teachers and the students in the proper usage and the procedures for those. So we're excited about that. The scholarship badging system. This is a new ID badging system for students and staff. And the great thing about this badging system, it's scalable. And so we're going to be able to leverage this over time as we implement this this coming school year with barcodes, with the radio frequencies in the cards, just like we have now, but we have 2 separate cards now. And so staff members will be able to open their doors and do the things that they do, while students will be able to use their ID cards for lunch lines, to check out library books, to scan in on a portable kiosk as they come into the school so that we know if they're supposed to be in the school or not. This system will update nightly with our existing systems that tell us if a student's been suspended or if they're not supposed to be at that campus. So we'll have the ability to very quickly tell if a student is supposed to be on that campus or in that location or not. Then eventually we'll be able to use that same system for the school buses. Through a tablet and a scanning system, you can tap your badge on that and it'll bring up a picture of the person that the badge is registered to, and a green box that says they're supposed to be there, or a red box around them that says they're not supposed to be there. So I think that's a great safety enhancement. And then the call boxes. Again, we ordered 44 emergency call boxes. We put 2 at every high school, 1 in the student parking lot, 1 in the athletic area. We put 1 at every middle school campus. We put 2 at Mercer Stadium and 2 at Hall Stadium, and we put 1 at all 3 of our agricultural centers. Those are solar powered. Again, just like we were talking about earlier, we didn't have to run any power lines to them. So solar powered boxes, and they go straight to our Fort Bend ISD police dispatcher, so it's immediate access to get help if somebody needs it. And so it's just a good visual. These are 3 major safety initiatives that I think very much support our students and our staff and our community, and I appreciate your support on those.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone have any comments or questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the technology toolkit. And Fort Bend ISD took a phase-in approach. There's going to be 2 phases with the rollout of the technology toolkit. As you can see, there's been there are 36,000 devices that are being rolled out as we speak. By the end of September, you can see the breakdown up on the screen as far as all the different types of technology and where they will be going. I think what's important to note is that there are currently 37 campuses that are going to be a part of phase 1 for the 1920 school year. For the 2021 school year, we're going to go ahead and include the rest of the campuses. The campus readiness level for blended learning was the determining factor to decide whether a campus was going to be a phase 1 or a phase 2. I think it's also important to know that teaching and learning is going to continue to provide the professional development needed to teachers to ensure that they are fully prepared for the phase 2 approach that's going to occur in 2021. When it comes to new programming, we are actually expanding the half-day program. As you all know, we're going to go ahead and proceed with a full-day pre-K program. As of now, we have, as you can see on the screen, 1,900 students for week 1. I will tell you, as of about an hour and a half ago, that number is a little incorrect. So I'm going to tell you we have 1,682 students that are fully enrolled, and we have 317 students that are in the queue. So we're off by a few. So the actual number is 1,999 if you do the math. So we're struggling to get that one last student so I can come and report 2,000 to you all, but that didn't happen. But what I'm happy to share is that last year we had 45 pre-K teachers. This year we expanded to 57, so we're at 57 now, and with that comes the paraprofessionals for each classroom as well. We do have the capacity for 2,244 students. We anticipate that we're still going to go ahead and receive students as the week progresses, and of course going into next week.
I would interrupt. It's actually 45 plus 57. We've added 57 new pre-K teachers.
Yes, 57 new pre-K teachers, which includes the 45 teachers from last year. So that's the number we have for this year. And of course, like I stated earlier, we also include paraprofessionals for each classroom as well, which takes us to that 11-to-1 ratio. Going on to the next program that we have, Early College High School and the Early College and Pathways in Technology, which we refer to as P-TECH. We have the Early College High School at Marshall High School, and we have the P-TECH programs at Willow Ridge and at Hightower. And just to refresh everybody's memory, Hightower, their program is going to focus on histology and health informatics, And at Willow Ridge, it's going to be computer programming. We have the capacity for 100 students in each program. And during the summer bridge program began. So, you know, many might think that the school year is going to start on Wednesday. It actually started for these students with the summer bridge that we had in the summer. So all the information that we have received is that it's been extremely successful. The summer bridge acts more as a freshman orientation that one would find if they were to enroll in college. So all the information that we have is that it's been extremely successful. TSI testing has begun as well, and we have percentages, and that looks favorable for us as well. Moving on to new campuses, what we have is we're excited with the James Reese Career and Technical Center. The center is going to provide, or it's going to offer specialized courses for students, and that's literally for all students in our district. I know you see the number that says 680 students. That's what we're going to have day one. Now, just so everybody understands that day one is not going to be Wednesday. Their first day is actually going to be on Thursday. Wednesday, they're going to spend their day at their home campus. But we do have 2 dual credit programs, and they are education and training and the firefighter program that's going to be made available. We're also excited, obviously, with the 200-plus business partners. Those partnerships are critical for the center because what they do is the partners provide financial support, they provide support when it comes to equipment, and they also are able to be guest speakers for our students. So that's going to be critical for the center. So we look forward to opening that on Thursday. The last new campus we have is Malala. It's going to open January 2020. I will tell you, the students are being, as you all know, they are at Seguin Elementary, and we have students at Oyster Creek K through first grade at Oyster Creek, 2nd through 5th at Seguin, and the partnership has been excellent. The administrations are working well together. The staff is excited. The campus actually had, on August 2nd, they had an activity which was more of a carnival. It was a fair to have the parents come speak and visit with campus administrators and the campus staff. I was there, Dr. Dupree was there, Dr. Mensa was there. It was a great event. It was for a few hours, but you could tell with the moment that we were there that the support was great. So we have a lot of excitement with that as well. The campus is fully staffed, so I think it's important to note that they're going to begin the year fully staffed. That's obviously always important for students to have a teacher as soon as they walk in that door. As far as the new campuses, that's all the information we have. So we're just ready to begin the school year and ring that bell at all the campuses that we have.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Do we have any questions or comments? Ms. Tossan?
I just had one quick question back for Chief. I know we're going to be rolling out the new ID badging system, and you talked about the kids scanning in and that type of thing, and you may have answered this question before, so I apologize if you have. But are we going to have one point of entry at our campuses, or will there be multiple points of entry? I'm just thinking about the flow of students, and they're about to get back to school. I know that we haven't gotten that quite up and running just yet, but it's soon to come.
Yeah, I think it depends on the campus. So for the elementaries, it's easier to have one point of entry because we have fewer students. Middle schools and high schools will probably not have one point of entry since you have bus ramps and you have drop-off area. So what we did was when we were designing the system, we have a stationary check-in area at the front where visitors would come in. Eventually, we will be able to use this just like Raptor. It's a visitor management system, so that'll be stationary there. And then we've built in rolling kiosks, so to speak, and also tablets. And so the administrators can use those wherever they like, whatever fits their campus and their flow of pedestrian traffic in the campus. So we're not tying them down to any one location. But if students are coming through, let's just say on the bus ramp, we can scan 60 students a minute, 1 per second coming in. So they're a lot more efficient than other ways of monitoring students.
Thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Thank you. Are your questions for Chief by chance? Mr. Rice? Are yours for Chief by chance? Chief, I wanted to ask one more thing while you're up there. I'm sorry. So this year, I know that we're ramping up our elementary patrols. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the board approved some 11 new officer positions and 2 sergeant positions. We're in the process of hiring and training those. Our application process takes a little bit longer than most in the district, but once we get somebody hired, they go through a 16-week training program. So it's 4 months before they're ever cut loose and ready to be on their own. So we're still in the process